nothing changes.
Hey guys, what's up? It's Amanda. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you've never been here before. My name is Amanda and I am a nursing student. I'm graduating in like 40 days and that's super exciting but also terrifying. And graduation means interviews and starting to look for jobs, and I have already had a handful of interviews, phone interviews, in-person interviews, everything under the sun. And this video is here to help you crush those interviews and hopefully land your dream nursing job. So in this video, we're gonna have like two sections. One is gonna be just like general tips for interviews and everything, and then the second part is going to be like commonly asked questions, like questions that I was asked during my interviews either multiple times or questions that I was never really like prepared to answer and was asked. Yeah, so first let's get into some nursing interview tips. So my biggest tip for you is practice. Research questions that are commonly asked. Obviously you can finish watching this video and learn some of the questions that I was asked, and have your answers ready, but don't be too rehearsed. It's good to rehearse and be ready, but you don't want to sound like a script. And I definitely had questions that I was asked in every single interview and I always had the same answer, and I tried really hard not to sound scripted or like I had everything like in my head what I wanted to say, because you want it to be like authentic. But you know, that's what happens when you get asked the same question multiple times. So that's my biggest thing, is practice. Know what questions are going to be asked, kind of have an idea of what you want to say. And the next tip is to research the mission statement of the organization that you're going to be working for. The two phone interviews that I've had so far, both times they asked questions directly related to the mission statement. So that's super important that you research that so you can kind of get an idea of what questions they're going to ask related to that. Very important. Also, it's nice to just know the mission statement of the place you want to work, because it should align with your missions and goals as a nurse, and it's nice to be able to bring up that you really identify with them in an interview as well. Tip number 3 is to make sure you look at the job description online or wherever you are applying. A lot of times there's going to be specific skills that they want you to have in there, like communication, diversity, whatever, and they'll kind of tweak the questions towards the skills that are mentioned in the job description. So that's really important to look at as well. Tip number 4 is eye contact. It is so important, and keeping a smile on your face the whole time. Obviously if you're having a phone interview, you can't really do it. It helps to still kind of smile during it, because it kind of just makes you seem happier and like you're enjoying the conversation. But for in-person interviews, both of my in-person interviews so far have been with 2 people, so it's important that you give eye contact equally. But like if this person over here asks me the question, I'm going to primarily like answer towards them, but I'm also going to make sure that I'm consistently looking at the other person as well. So eye contact, I feel like that's kind of obvious, but just kind of reminding yourself like, I'm not always looking at this person, gotta look at this person sometimes, like going back and forth. Tip number 5 is to always send a thank you after you interview, whether it be the day of or the next day, or I interviewed on a Friday afternoon and didn't get a chance to send it until Monday because the weekend, and they wouldn't have gotten it anyway. So making sure you're sending a thank you, whether it be an email or handwritten. Honestly, these days emails are so much faster and they're really accepted anyway. If you send a handwritten thank you note, like that's super great and they're gonna remember you, but also it might take a few days to get there, so whatever you want to do. So yeah, those are my 5 biggest tips for interviews itself, the biggest thing though, practice, practice, practice. Sit down with someone, have them ask you a bunch of questions written down. Have them make up questions that they think you might be asked, because they might think of something that I didn't mention or other people haven't mentioned, and you might be like, oh, that's a good question. Like, I guess I never really thought of that. So do that. Alright, so this next part is going to be commonly asked questions that I was asked during my interviews that I remember. Kind of, interviews are a blur after they happen. You're like, I don't even know what happened. So yeah, these are ones that I remember being asked. The first main question that they're going to ask you is, why do you want to work on that specific unit for that specific hospital? Usually this is a pretty easy answer, especially if you're really passionate about the work that they do or anything. But if you're kind of just like looking around and applying to a lot of jobs and you don't really have a preference, you still should have a reason why you want to work for that hospital. Maybe you had clinicals there, maybe you enjoy their mission statement. That's a great time to mention their mission statement and values, and like that you really agree with them there. So yeah, they're definitely gonna ask you that, because why wouldn't they? Another question that I got asked was, why do you want to be a nurse? Which everyone should have that reasoning. Everyone should have that story locked in their mind, the time where they realized that they wanted to be a nurse, because that's something that I was asked for nursing school essays, nursing school interviews. So many times I was asked, why do I want to be a nurse? So that's a pretty easy one that you should have, but that's something that if you don't know it off the top of your head, definitely practice it and get an answer on the top of your head, because if you stumble with that one, that's kind of a little like red flag for them, I feel like. The next one I was asked every single time, I think, phone interview and in-person interview, and it was a time that I went above and beyond my line of duty as a nurse or nursing student, or even when I worked as a CNA. So that's definitely something where you can pull on the heartstrings maybe a little bit of the interviewers. I know my story. I guess I can share my time that I've shared with every single interviewer. I was doing clinical and we had a patient, and it was my second day working with them, and on their chart it said that it was their birthday, and they were, I think, in their 90s, didn't have family visiting at all. So I was like, you know what, let's get them a card, have all the staff sign it, have a little post on their door that says it's their birthday. And yeah, when we gave them the card, they were so happy, and it brought tears to my eyes, because it was just such a like a little thing that I did, and it made such a huge impact. So that's definitely one example that I have. I know there's many examples of times, because that's what we do as nurses. We never just stay where we're supposed to. We always go above and beyond. So that one's not hard to find a good answer and story for. The next question that I was asked a lot is just a time when you had a diverse patient and how you dealt with that, because not everyone's the same. Everyone has some sort of diversity or something that makes them different, so having an answer for that one I was asked a lot as well. Another question that I was asked, which I was kind of like thrown off by, was a time when a patient and I were like in a disagreement. Which, I mean, if it doesn't happen, it's okay for you to say, I've never experienced that, but if I had experienced it, this is what I would do. Because we're nursing students, we haven't experienced everything yet. Like, there's gonna be questions that they ask that you haven't experienced, and it's important that you don't just like shut the question down, and that you say what you would have done if you would have been in that situation. That's, I guess, another tip for you. Another question that I was asked was a time where I made a mistake and what I learned from it, and that one was definitely one that I wasn't prepared to answer, so I had to like think about, and definitely sat there for a minute and was like, I don't know. So yeah, if you need a minute to think of an answer, or if you don't have an answer, it's okay to like say, can I have a minute? Or just say that you can't really think of a time, but like, again, what would you do if you had that experience? Oh, along with the mistake one, they also asked what I learned from that mistake and what changes I made from that. And along with that, another question that I was asked was related to criticism and how I handle criticism, and giving an example of a time that I handled criticism. And for that I use clinical experience, just like something that my instructor or preceptor said that I needed to work on. Another commonly asked question, actually though I was never asked these in any interviews, is your strengths and weaknesses. I feel like that's a pretty broad question that they're just kind of seeing what you say. Actually no, I was asked what my weaknesses are, and one of my weaknesses is that I can stretch myself too thin sometimes. I can overcommit to helping others, and when they're asking you for weaknesses, you kind of have to tweak it to make it seem like almost like a good thing that you do too much is what is the best answer. They don't want you to go in and be like, yeah, I'm always late. Like, that's not a good weakness to have. I feel like it's kind of just like a trick question for like another way for you to like talk about your strengths, honestly. Another question that I was asked was a time that I showed initiative or was a leader in nursing specifically, which was kind of hard for me to think of because being an accelerated nursing student, I haven't had time for leadership positions or anything, and I've only been in the program for a year, so I kind of had to, that was one where again I had to sit and think for a second of a time when I was a leader in nursing, and I actually ended up using CNA experience, which is totally okay. If you have experiences that answer these questions that aren't from nursing, that's okay, because chances are that like you're not gonna get all your experiences from nursing school. And lastly, a commonly asked question is like, where do you see yourself in 5 years, or like your career goals? From this, they really want to know, like, are you gonna stick with us for a while? Is this kind of just a stepping stone for you? But they also want to see that you're motivated to maybe have leadership roles or be like a charge nurse or something like that. Yeah, and then so at the end of the interview, usually they sit down and they ask you like, do you have any questions for us? And 99% of the time they have already answered all my questions that I had in my head. I'll give you some examples of questions that I have, like I always have written down just in case they don't answer them, so I can like look back on it. So like FTE hours, like days, nights, specific to the job schedule, what the weekend rotation is, if it's every other, every 3, whatever that is, holiday rotations, every other, every 3, what are their holidays, changes from hospital to hospital, do they have on-call, do you have to be on call, is there a requirement with that, can you choose that, how flexible they are with working. I know some places you can pretty much schedule yourself, other places are a strict schedule. They're probably going to send you their benefits and stuff like that. If you have any questions about that, don't hesitate to contact HR. That's what they're there for, is to answer your questions about that. It's also important to know what the ratio is, patients to nurse and also patients to CNAs, because if you have like four patients to 1 nurse, but there's like 12 patients to 1 CNA, chances are that you're gonna have to help the CNAs out a little bit with their like workload. So that's also really important to know. And what the CNA's role is on that floor. For example, the postpartum job that I applied for, the CNAs don't do a ton of care on that floor. They do a lot of like stocking and like discharge and stuff like that. So the nurses do most of the actual like care of the patients. Another important question is to ask about just the environment and like the work environment in general. Like, is everyone pretty much friendly? Like, do they hang out outside of work, or is it kind of just like everyone's there, they do their job, they go home? You can always ask to shadow. I think it's a great way to see what the floor is like before you like say yes, I want to work there. And most places will be totally okay with you shadowing before you accept a position. Try to do it before they offer you the job. If you don't have time, I'm sure that you would be able to shadow before you accept a job offer. Always have something to ask them after, even if it's just like completely just off the top of your head. Always have something to ask them, because chances are that they did not answer every single question you have. What my advice to you is to take these questions that I gave you, and also like research other YouTubers or like blogs or other things like that that have like commonly asked interview questions, and just write out your responses or like generally what you want to say, and just like go over them in your head, say them out loud too, because in your head and speaking sometimes it doesn't work out completely. So yeah, having all that prepared and practicing is the biggest thing. And when you go into the interview, just remain calm and confident. You are going to be a great nurse. You will find a job that you love, and you got this. So yeah, let me know if you guys have any other questions about interviews or anything. I'm like 99% sure that I have a job, but it's not 100% yet. So I will keep you guys updated with that. And that is it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any more videos about nursing school. And graduation is coming up and NCLEX is coming up, and it's so scary but so exciting. I will see you guys next week. Bye.
Open eye, feel the waves cut through me, hypnotized by the sounds I'm breathing.